I just stuck a bull. This bull has been sounding gnarly, nasty. On my right, there's two bulls fighting. I can see them going, their bodies moving back and forth between the trees. And then all of a sudden I hear this. There's another bull right there. Walking through his aspens.
I shot him. You didn't hear that?
No. We both just shot the same bull.
He shot him first.
He shot him first. Oh my gosh. What a heck of a pursuit, dude. All freaking day.
When your buddy calls you, says you got a buck down. And what does he got? A buck down.
Look what I found.
What a sweet coos, man. Opening day, heck yeah. Way to go, Steve.
Arizona Archery Club is a premier partner with Bowhunting AZ. When it comes to attention to detail and a fiery passion, Arizona Archery Club brings it all to the table. With all the latest bows and archery equipment, you can demo every single model in person, free of charge at their demo room. Walk through the process with an experienced bow tech and see which bow is right for you without the sales pressure. Their indoor archery range offers air-conditioned lanes with standard or 3D targets available. When you visit, be sure to mention you're a listener to the Bowhunting AZ podcast. Let's all support local. Conquering your own dark mountain is no easy task. The backcountry requires grit and determination. Having quality supplements like Dark Mountain's Kodiak pre-workout, whey proteins, and nourishing recovery are all an essential part of your success in the journey to harvest from the land. Dark Mountain is a 2% for conservation company because they know that with a collective effort, we can cherish these resources for a long time to come. Use promo code BowhuntingAZ20 for 20% off your order. Afflictor broadheads are cutting to the core of broadhead technology. With both expandable hybrids and fixed broadheads, you have an arsenal available for any hunting need. Team Bowhunting AZ has placed our trust in Afflictor as our exclusive broadheads to hunt with. Check out Afflictor's selection over at afflictorbroadheads.com. Having equipment you can count on is essential, especially in the raw elements. SpyPoint brings technology and dependability to the forefront of the hunting industry with their buck tracker detection technology. Trail cams are an essential way for hunters to understand and learn how our harvest behaves in their habitat. Visit spypoint.com today and see the difference for yourself. Too many of us feel at a loss when it comes to storing or displaying our bows. Racks has the answer. With many of the major bow brands available or even the option to have your own custom racks made. This is hands down the only way to show off your setup. I even prefer to have a mini racks for my Euro mounts. Made in the US out of carbon steel, racks and mini racks secure into your wall and offer padded hooks to give your bow the perfect spot where it's out of the way but easy to access. Check out racks and use promo code PASSION15 to get 15% off your order. Visit racksinc.com. That's RAXXINC.com today.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Bowhunting AZ podcast. In this episode, we welcome back Steve Chappell of Elk Camp TV. For those of you who may be new to hunting, Steve Chappell is basically the Michael Jordan of elk calling. As a super humble guy, he'd probably never put it that way, but it's true. And this guy is fluent in elk. Steve Chappell produces the infamous show Elk Camp TV, which airs on the Sportsmen Channel. And in the show, he showcases the hunt and journey of his clients who utilize his guiding services. Steve Chappell's been hunting elk here in Arizona for over 20 years. He's been a guide and a devout man of faith and someone who I really want to aspire to be and to dive into his how and why more of Mr. Chappell's bag of tricks. And so why he's calling a certain way and how he's gauging when to utilize certain calls and when to ditch certain things and all that together. So Mr. Chappell, welcome to the podcast and glad to have you back.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. I'm excited to be here. It's going to be fun and a nice distraction considering the current state of affairs living under. And yeah, I'm just excited about coming on and talking about elk calling and elk hunting with you for a while. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime we can kind of huddle together and exchange stories and education and just get lost in the elk woods, whether we're there physically or mentally, it's always a great time.
Yeah, you got that right. I'll take virtual elk hunting even if I can't.
There you go.
For sure. My head's always there for sure.
Yep. Hey, there's your next step. You can do some virtual reality elk hunts with Steve Chappell, and you can start selling those online with people.
I don't know if those would sell or not.
You're in the process right now of kind of editing your next TV show and everything like that. Can you tell us a little bit about when that'll be coming up, when people can find that, and just kind of what it's like to be kind of diving into your own TV series?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. I appreciate that. Yeah, so we're going into season 3, and as you mentioned, it airs on Sportsmen Channel. It'll start on Monday, June 29th. And this year we have a 7:30 p.m. Eastern time Monday airtime. So I'm excited about that. And then there'll be 2 additional air times that'll be to be determined. So I don't know those quite yet. But yeah, as you said, I'm hard at editing and prepping episodes right now. I think I'm on the 4th one right now. I'm really excited about the content of this show this year. Like always, it's going to be real encounter driven. We did have some incredible encounters and got some great footage this past year that I'm going through and implementing into these episodes. And editing is kind of a love-hate relationship for me. I've been doing it for about 20 years now.
Oh, wow.
And by no means do I know everything about editing, that's for sure. It's, I think, an endless journey of learning. But it is nice to be in control of that, if you know what I'm saying, even though it's very time consuming. You get to put what you want on there, portray it how you want. And so, I think it's a phenomenal opportunity. Was able to put one episode out from season 1 onto YouTube here recently. So for any of your listeners who would like to get a taste of what the show was like, they could look at my YouTube channel. I think it's Steve Chappell Elk Camp, and they could see that, or it's on my Instagram bio as well. They could take a look at that. It's an archery hunt from Arizona. I think they'd love it.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, in this interview here, I'll be referring to that episode a couple times. That's the Screaming Bulls episode.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. So I'll be, if those of you listening, go watch that and make sure you've consumed that piece of content from him, because there's a couple things in here that you'll be able to relate back to when I ask Mr. Chappell a couple questions, some of his tactics and things that he does with that. So what do you do? Do you find yourself getting kind of fidgety and stuff at the desk when you've sat there for a while and you're editing? I have to get up and walk away for like 20 minutes every once in a while. Do you find yourself doing the same thing?
Yeah, I kind of have to do it in spurts, I guess, if you will. I can't just sit down and do it for 8 or 10 hours. Maybe that's just how I'm made up, but I can't edit that way. I almost equate it to writing a paper, like when you're in college or something. You have to have just a little bit of inspiration. I've gotten better at just being able to grind through it at times, so I don't totally have to have inspiration, but again, I'm not the guy who can just, do it from 8 to 5 every day or whatnot.
Sure.
But yeah, it sounds like you're the same way, and I do have to get up and, stretch my back. I find myself leaning forward and getting in bad positions and getting kinks in my back and neck and getting nearsighted looking at the computer, all of that stuff. But yeah, so I have to take some breaks, get away from it, go out, take a hike, shoot the bow, something. Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And I've noticed too, when I get up and I get that break away and then I come back, sometimes I'll view a segment of like a fuller episode, or like for me, I do short films, you during like a TV series, but I'll kind of view that piece of content differently when I come back and look at it. And sometimes it's just nice to hit it with fresh eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes when you get a break away from it, your mind starts working and you come up with ideas and creative things to do. and it just gives you a fresh look at it when you come back.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like you have to be in a groove, in the right mood to edit well, I feel like.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's true. Yeah. I found this last year, I started using Spotify a lot lately. And over the last year, I found some video editing playlists that work really well as far as getting like creatively your creative mind juices going and all that stuff. And it's worked out really well to have that music on in the background.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that.
Yeah, sure. I can send them to you.
You bet.
How many hunts are you filming typically over the course of a guiding season?
Typically, well, not typically, they air 13 episodes in a 2-quarter airing. So my show, starts there in late June and runs through December. So they run 13 episodes, but with me just being elk specific, it's very hard for me to come up with 13 episodes, that are brand new. So in general, I'm probably going to have 9 to 10 new episodes and then have to re-air to make the 13. Mm-hmm. I'm just kind of the mindset that with my show being Elk Camp, and that's what it is, and that's what it's about, and it's for people who love elk, like I do, and have a passion and think that they're a very special animal, and a very set apart part of the creation, that I don't feel like they would enjoy it if all of a sudden I threw on there a bear episode or a coyote episode or a whitetail or whatnot. Maybe that's just me, but I just really want to keep it elk focused for sure.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Have you ever done any, non-hunt episodes in Elk Camp, like just a tutorial episode or like a cooking episode or anything like that? Or has it always just been strictly the hunts?
Yeah, that's a great point, because I am going to delve into that somewhat this year.
Oh, nice.
I always have a tip of the week on there, a tip segment, basically where I talk about a call that I do, what call I use to do it with, and then blow it and demonstrate it. I've aired from that just a little bit this year, in that I talk about the call, but then I show up being used in the field, actually out in the field.
Oh, cool.
But to take it even one step further, I think I'm going to do an episode or two where I'm talking about calling situations and scenarios, and I'm describing more what's going on, what calls I'm using and why, but I'm going to be backing it up with actual footage so that it's still very entertaining and has hunt footage implemented in there, but then also is more, instructional driven, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great idea. I like that. Kind of breaking from the mold just a little bit, but still keeping it relative to the overall subject.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely don't want to be a talking head and just take up a whole episode talking. But being able to demonstrate and then show it in the field, I think, is very meaningful for people when they can see it actually rubber meets the road. They've heard me explain the call, how I blow it, and then let's go to the field and watch it work here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. One last question about filming, then we'll kind of transition to your specialty elk calling and stuff. But for those who are maybe taking their first stab at filming for someone, or for, I guess from your perspective of a guy that is having stuff filmed, especially with clients when there's dollars on the line and everything, what can you speak to the cameramen as to, like, don't you dare do this, or like, here's how you can compose yourself on these hunts while you're filming for someone?
Yeah, I've been very blessed in this regard, to be honest. I always get cameramen who are positive. They're happy to be there. Their countenance speaks to that. That is what means the most to me, is having someone there who's all in and who's motivated to be there, and you can see it in their, in their persona. Because you don't want a Debbie Downer there for sure. So the first thing I say is, attitude is everything. And if me and the guide and the hunter and the cameraman develop a rapport, then you've got that teamwork makes the dream work going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no negativity in the room, so to speak. So that's the first thing I love when a cameraman is that way. The second thing that I think is very important, and I know you know this, is we're running 2 cameras on a hunt. So we have, what I call the kill camera that's on the tripod that's got the servo zoom. In other words, it's got a zoom that you can zoom in and out. And then we're running, a mirrorless camera. And I tell my cameramen that really probably 90% of the hunt should be filmed with that mirrorless camera, and 10% with the kill camera. And the 10% being the actual elk is coming in and you're filming the elk coming to the call and to the setup. That's what you use the kill camera for. But the remainder of the hunt, Steven, I'm running these cameras like this A7 III that I have. It just the way you can pose with that and have that soft background, it just makes your footage look so amazing. And that's what I love about it. So a guy who knows when to run each camera and when to be on each one, and gets a complete story. It's amazing. I think everybody should have to edit before they run a camera. If you edit, then you know what you need to put an episode together, and it makes you a much better cameraman when you've done that. I'm sure you would agree, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. If you could just, get somebody that's aspiring to, like film a hunt or whatever, and just dump a hunt's worth of footage in their lap and say, you need to edit this. Yeah, they would completely understand after the project was done. They would totally understand exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah, because I would say if I ever lack anything when I'm putting a hunt together, it's that B-roll or supporting footage, that you get that mirrorless camera. That if I'm ever lacking anything, it never tends to be, actions and encounters and getting footage with the kill camera when a bull's coming in, screaming, coming into the calls. But yeah, just that whole supporting footage, that B-roll stuff is so nice to have, because I would rather have, 200 clips with the mirrorless camera in a day that I can choose from versus having 10 and going, how am I going to stretch this out?
Sure.
Yeah. More than enough is always better than not enough, because you can't make something out of nothing, for sure.
Yep. Yeah. And B-roll, like you said, it's hard to come by when you need it. It's not something you can kind of fabricate after the fact. Yeah. And it's hard to get though too, especially, for me personally, because I'm, it's either me or Jake or just, both of us, but I'm on the move usually. I'm trying to get after an animal, and so it's like I don't have time to stop and film B-roll. And so it's like, it's that filler footage. It really builds the story though. So
yeah, I don't know how guys can self-film. I mean, anybody that does that, it amazes me. Very hard to. Yes.
Yeah, extremely. As for calling, can you give us some pointers on how to differentiate our standard cow call versus an estrus call? So when are we going to use that, and how can we just make those two things sound completely different?
Yeah, so I definitely don't overuse that estrus call. And for me, it's mainly tone and emotion that I recognize in elk calling. I think that's what I've learned over the years. And, most times when you're around elk, you're just when you hear cows and calves talk, it's just kind of that, mostly it's just that calmer cow-calf communication type muse that you hear. I do hear when they're in those summer groups and they've had their calves like in June and July, I will hear some of that, that more gravelly, high emotion. And I think that's probably a cow, scolding her calf or saying, hey, get over here type thing. But then I've heard it at another level in the fall. And the first time I heard that, gosh, I want to say it's been at least 15 years ago when I first heard this sound that, I named it the estrus scream. That's just the term that I gave it, not necessarily that's what it is, but I couldn't believe it. I remember telling my dad about it, and I told him, I said, if I had not had elk right in front of me, I would not have thought that was an elk sound. It sounded more to me, I told him it sounded like a monkey or a chimpanzee in a cage and having a fit. What it sounds like. But, Stephen, to this day, I am still kind of shy and passive about using that sound. Now, when I do it, when I actually start doing it, I'm not passive. What I mean is I don't go to the woods with that at the top of my game, like at the top of the tackle box. I don't pull it out right away. What I do is I wait until there's nothing going on. And then I think to myself, okay, well, my hunter knows that nothing's going on. So by me doing this, I'm not messing anything up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Kind of
scenario.
A last resort kind of deal.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, it is so amazing how many times when that's the scenario and nothing's going on and I pull it out as that last ditch effort.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally, this sounds exaggerated, but my cousin Gary had this saying years ago. He said he was hunting with someone who called every time their left foot hit the ground. So, meaning they call way too much.
Yep.
But when I'm making that sound, I am literally doing that. I am using it very frequently. I'm basically just trolling with it. So I'm basically making that sound about every time my left foot hits the ground. I'm being very loud and very obnoxious with it, because when you hear cows doing that, they're not subtle at all about it. There's like a desperation in it. There's a lot of volume. There's a lot of 3-dimension in it and a lot of ground in it. And so that's what I'm, doing my best to reproduce. I found that using a mouth diaphragm is really the only way for me to be able to make that sound well.
Yep.
And you have to kind of be in the right frame of mind, a little bit like editing. You have to, be relaxed and get yourself relaxed where you can take a deep breath and get that sound from deep down in your stomach to get it to come out right. And it is really amazing, Stephen. Like I said, to have a morning where no bulls are bugling at all, or an evening where no bulls are bugling, and you start walking along, trolling, making that sound, how it will all of a sudden wake elk up who were not vocal. And what I do when they start bugling to it, I just walk right at them and I keep making the sound. And there's typically a train wreck right in the middle. Wow. And I have to set up right at the end. One thing I found in using it, let's say I'm walking toward a bull and he's 300 yards away and he starts bugling at it. And I move in to say 150 yards and I set my hunter up, and then I'm fairly stationary making that sound. They don't seem to like that. They seem to cool off to it when I stop like that. So it's almost over and over proven to be that I have to continue moving toward them and wait till the very last second to set up and just have them come roaring in on top of you.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
So it's like they pick up and tune into the fact that it's stopped moving.
Yeah. Oh, their depth perception is incredible.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what it is. It apparently makes them a little bit leery. Like, yeah, why was she walking toward me consistently and now all of a sudden she stopped?
Yep. Yeah.
Even when I'm using regular cow calling, just normal standard mews, whether it's on a mouth reed or whether it's on one of my open reeds like the Trophy Wife or this new Heartbreaker or whatever call I'm using, I found that distance is so meaningful with elk. Most of my call-ins over the years have definitely happened, within inside of 150 yards for sure. Many times closer than that. I think the hardest thing for people is to control their emotions, to not want to call from too far away and set up and try to call a bull from, say, a half a mile or a quarter of a mile.
Yeah.
Man, you can get inside of that 150, 120 yard range and, have the wind right and then blow that call in a controlled manner. It's amazing how many bulls you can call in by doing that. Yeah,
absolutely. Do you have to see significant rut activity before you'll decide to start utilizing that estrus call? Or, can it just be, is it like during the rut, but it's just dead quiet? Or can it be like, we haven't had any rut activity yet, nothing's happened today, no bugles, but I'm going to throw it out as a last ditch effort before we leave this spot?
I think that, not that it couldn't work, but I think about the earliest I've called a bull in with it, I'm going to say is around the 10th or 12th of September.
Okay.
But it's mainly because I haven't tried it before then, because as you know, in Arizona, our season usually starts after the 10th.
Yeah.
So I think it could work before that. This last year, the most meaningful encounter I had with it was on the third day of the archery hunt, which would have been, I think, the 13th or 14th, right in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Prior to that, the elk were fairly quiet, not very vocal at all. But what I was encountering were herd bulls that already had cows, but weren't being super vocal at all.
Yeah.
I was jerking what I call a courtesy bugle out of them, and then moving in and again getting really tight with them, most times getting a visual on either them or their cows, and then using a lip ball bugle or what an old friend of mine, Joel Turner, calls a bull calling cows bugle. It's basically a lip ball bugle, and again, to me, blowing it with the proper volume, emotion, and tone is so important. It's just amazing when all of those elements are right, how those bulls will, get the attitude of, are you kidding me? You come here and mess with me and my cows like that, I'm going to come over here and knock you out.
Yep. And what's funny is we had that exact same experience too during our hunt last year. And it was like, we would get that courtesy bugle or, those kind of things, but it wasn't at first, they just weren't really committing very much. One thing I did that I really learned from a lot though, was late in the evenings, once it was too dark to shoot, a lot of the bulls would still bugle and fire up. And so I used that time period afterwards, and I learned a ton just by utilizing your techniques and your tutorials that you've put online. I would try and mimic a lot of your stuff that you've taught us to do in that late period, because they would still fire off and still talk to me. And so I would see, like, can I get a chuckle out of this bull, or can I get a lip ball back? I would break away then and kind of grow in experience with other different types of calls in that late period, probably 7 o'clock at night.
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of times they more readily bugle after dark, like you found out.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, Jake and I just parked on a road, and I was battling across this open field with one bull for a long time, and I was surprised at how long he stuck around for.
Yeah,
but
the longer I do this, the more I find out. And I try not to go to the field with a necessary approach that I'm solid in, if you know what I mean, Stephen. In other words, I'm not going to try to throw the same thing at every bull. I'm going to assess the situation. First off, I'm going to determine whether I think he's a herd bull or a satellite bull. And a lot of times I can determine that by the sound of his bugling and by the frequency of his bugling. You can determine a lot by that.
Okay.
And if I determine that he's a herd bull, then that's where I'm going to get in that. I want to sneak in there, like a lion, and get close to him and, get in that position where he's in that fight or flight where he has to deal with me. If I blew that same bugle from 300 yards away, I would probably get that result of him rounding up his cows, bugling and sounding real good. It would sound real good, but then all of a sudden the bugling would get further and further away because he would push the cows away, or his cows would walk away from me. A lot of times that's what happens, especially elk that have been pressured. And I think our Arizona elk get pressured quite a bit.
Yeah.
The cows will pull the bull away. But I'm telling you, when you get in there and you're say 80, 100 yards away from him and his cows, and they don't know you're there, and you make that lip ball bugle and you do it in the right emotion and tone, I'm telling you, it's unreal the response it gets. And then by contrast, if I feel like I'm dealing with a satellite bull, usually my approach with them most times is going to be, okay, he's looking for company. He's out there, wanting to be with cows. He's wanting to be that herd bull. Again, I want to make it as convenient for him as I can by getting close and making the terrain easy for him to get to me. And that's where I'm mainly going to be using my cow calls for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
satellite.
Yeah.
But again, I think every bull's different. I think there's bulls that are, fairly passive. There's some that are somewhere in the middle, and there's some that are super aggressive. And, I feel like you just develop kind of an instinct and a learning curve over the years, to where you just kind of have a gut instinct of what sound you need to use and when you need to blow it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
I want to make it more of a personal goal, I think, to get out and call more for people. Because I think you can learn so much, in the years that you're not able to, hunt, if you don't get drawn or whatever, if you can get out and go call for a buddy. I mean, obviously make sure you know enough that you're not going to screw up their hunt, but if you can get out there and just start practicing and calling for someone and stuff that, doesn't, maybe they drew a tag and they don't have somebody to call for them. Like, that's the best thing, I think.
Oh, no doubt. I totally agree. And it's so hard for guys if they draw a tag and they're hunting totally alone to try to call bulls into themselves.
Yeah.
It's super hard.
We saw a lot this last season. I was surprised how many solo hunters there were.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you got to pick your setups very well, and you got to be able to control your calling because, as you know, I mean, you got to get them inside of 50 yards and have the right shot angles. And when you're by yourself, that's hard to pull.
Sure. Yeah.
Off.
And in your episode, Screaming Bulls, there's one scene where I think you cow call, and that bull's head turns on such a fast swivel. He looks like right at you. Like he knew exactly what tree you were under. And it's like, if you're hunting solo and you're the one that's calling, that's going to be tough. Cause you better be ready too. Cause he's coming in and he's going to come in hot.
Yeah, you're right. They peg you. I mean, they know right where you're at. Their depth perception, like their nose is just flawless. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard to fool. And that's why having a caller and having them call the bulls past you as a hunter is such an advantage. It's phenomenal to be out there and get to call to them and be with buddies and clients and all of that. I love it all.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you ever see an instance where you're cow calling with an elk bugle tube?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Okay.
In the past, I didn't do that a whole lot, but I found myself the last couple of years, especially in 2019, doing it more. And I think what brought it on was the windy conditions.
Okay.
We had really bad winds on the archery and the muzzleloader hunting Unit 9. And so I found myself doing that, project a cow call through the wind. And, as I was doing, I was like, man, that sounds pretty good, even without the wind, even if the wind wasn't blowing. It not only amplifies it, but it gives it more of a three-dimensional sound. And cows can make all kinds of different sounds. And, sometimes it sounds muffled and real quiet. But then other times it sounds real projected, like it's done into a 50-gallon drum or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, using a tube can give it that resonance and project it like that. So, yeah, I do.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, if you guys, for those of you listening, if you have a really windy day out there and stuff, and you're trying to kind of cut through that wind and see if there's anything possible, as far as action to happen, you might want to utilize that bugle tube with a cow call and see if you can get something going.
Absolutely.
If you had to look at the bulk of your encounters over the years, what would you say, just a general percentage ratio in terms of bulls that you see are lovers versus fighters? Because in our last podcast that we had together, you talked to us about really understanding, like, is this bull a lover or is he a fighter? Does he want to hear those sweet cow calls, or does he want to come in and punch you in the face? What kind of do you think would be a percentage ratio for something like that?
I would say that I've been more guilty of dictating that than the bull's personality, maybe. And that's because up until probably 3 or 4 years ago, I would go to the field with that mindset of I'm a cow caller and I'm a cow caller only. And that's all I'm going to do is cow call and variations on that. So since I've been using, more bugling, especially this lip ball bugle for herd bulls, I would say my calling has turned more into, 80% of the call-ins are with cow calls and 20% are with bugling. But I will say this, of the herd bulls I've called in the last 3 or 4 years, I would say it's almost about 100% bugling.
Wow. Yeah, just because they're that dominance factor.
Yeah, and the thing with herd bulls is that I had to realize more and more is that they have what they want. They've already got what they want, and they're protecting what they have. They're all about protecting that group of cows that they have and not losing those cows. So, you know, if you're outside of that group and you're not super, super tight, they're just going to bugle at you because they've got their cows, and they're just going to say to you, hey, I'm right here. I'm the man. Come over to me. You know, this is where you want to be, rather than him straying away from his cows, 150 yards and potentially losing them or losing track of them. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the shift in my mindset that I've had the last 3 or 4 years is, okay, this guy, he's got what he wants. A bird in hand is better than 2 in the bush is his mentality.
Yep.
But it's the opposite for him. He might have, 5, 10, 15, 20 cows. So why is he going to want to come over to one cow? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think occasionally you can get that. I do have that happen occasionally. And I feel like that's an instance where the bull doesn't have any cows that are in estrus at the time. Oh, okay. And he just thinks, well, boy, she sounds pretty good. She sounds different. Maybe I'll go take a look at her.
Yep.
So not to say that cow calling can't work, but it seems like most times you just get that real aggressive bugle back. And then if you persist and keep cow calling, it seems like they get a little leery of it. And then all of a sudden they're either going quiet on you or they're pushing away from you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Elk vocalization in general really varies across the board in almost all Arizona units. What are some of the top tiered vocal units that typically host bulls that just rut hard and just love to scream?
Yeah, I would say without question, the best unit I've been in for bugling is 23. And unfortunately, I don't get to spend a ton of time in that unit, mainly because there's so few tags. And so you don't have a lot of tag holders, and so I don't get many bookings year in and year out for that unit. We do very well in there when we do get a client. But I always find myself saying, anytime I get in 23 and I've come from any other unit, it can be 9, 10, any of these other units, I'll say out loud to myself, Stephen, these bulls know how to bugle. I call it the Jurassic Park unit of Arizona.
That's awesome.
To a slightly lesser degree, unit 9 most of the time is fairly vocal, especially, if you have good conditions with good feed and the elk are healthy. In general, especially when you get past like the 18th of the month, they're going to kick in. Unit 1 typically has pretty good consistent bugling. 3C usually has fairly, it can be kind of hit or miss, kind of spotty in there. Mm-hmm. But in general, pretty good unit for bugling. Unit 10 can be hot or cold, but when it's hot, it can be absolutely chaotic.
Wow.
Again, when it's hot, it can be like unit 23, where you're just going, oh my goodness, there's 5 or 6 bulls that you can hear bugling with an earshot, and you're just wondering which one to go after first. But it's a unit that takes the right conditions. If it's a droughty year and the elk aren't real healthy, then the rut can be real subdued or almost non-existent. Mm-hmm. So I would say those that I named right there are, in general, the most vocal units that I've experienced.
Okay. If someone has been drawing some kind of like the standard, units that are just kind of the not necessarily low-hanging fruit, but just the general units in Arizona, and they're looking to step it up a notch to these units where it's like, I probably want a guide for this. What are some of those units that people should start looking towards applying for?
As the top units?
Maybe not necessarily like the very top, obviously like not, it probably takes a lot of points to draw like 23 and 9, but like maybe some lower lying ones that are just underneath there to kind of start stepping up their game. What's some units like that they could start checking out? Yeah,
I gotcha. I would put units like, say, 7 West, 8, 27 if somebody's a physical person and can handle, the up and down of 27.
Okay.
Those would be my main ones. Maybe 5B north, 5B south on the right years.
Mm-hmm.
Those would be the main units I would look at as being kind of the strong mid-tier units.
Perfect. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep.
That's great. That's something we can start to look to aspire to. And I know personally, I'd like to get into some better units too. So.
Yeah, and the nice thing to keep in mind, and that the listeners will want to take into account when they apply, is I always try to get across. It's a 5-choice system. It all comes down to your first 2 choices when you're applying for bull and you're applying for rut hunts.
Mm-hmm.
But the beautiful thing about it is that the computer considers both your first and your second choice. So it does allow you to really go for that strong hunt as your first choice. And then I tell people the harder one to pick is the second choice, because that's the choice where you've got to say, okay, where do I draw the line? Where are my baseline expectations? Would I be happy with, a 300 plus bull, or am I wanting more of a trophy? What am I looking for as far as bugling activity goes? All of those things come into play when picking that second choice. But the great thing is, you've got those 2 choices that are very legitimate. And I tell people, always use the first choice for the better, harder to draw hunt, and then the second for the hunt that meets your baseline expectations, whatever those may be. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And as a beginner for me last year, I chose my home run hunt, the first one, and got it. So
cool.
Be ready to draw in case, a lot of people I'm sure click it and think, yeah, right. Not going to happen, but it can.
Yeah.
So be careful.
Oh yeah. Those tags are for real. Yep. Absolutely.
Yep. How have you seen Arizona's elk population change over the course of the past couple years in terms of, we've gone from, last year was really good, but the year before that, we've pretty much gone from extreme drought to, it'll be a couple years now of plentiful rainfall. If we keep going on the track we are this year, we're going to have another really, really good year. How have you seen that change? And as far as size, antler growth, maybe rut?
Yeah. The main thing that I've noticed, Stephen, was the size of the bulls. The antler growth was astounding last year. I had actually gotten to where I, thought in many units, man, the trophy quality is way off. I think in general, the trophy quality has flipped over the last dozen years, something like that. And that's from running trail cameras and just seeing the crop of bulls every year, and how they develop. I do think that overall it has dropped a little bit, but man, last year it really did rebound, and I really see that happening again this year. There's going to be some really nice bulls this year. First off, because I think the archery hunt was kind of tough for a lot of people with the high winds during a lot of the hunt and spotty bugling. And then, as you know, the late rifle hunt got bombed with a huge winter storm, and so many people weren't even able to get out there and hunt. And, those few who were successful were studs, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So there was a big carryover of bulls that got through this past year that should be even better this year with the good range conditions that we're having this spring. So it's really looking up in Arizona.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I know last year was phenomenal growth. Some of the bulls that we were seeing around some of the general areas where people would congregate and just kind of do their, harvest of the day show off. We were just seeing absolute studs roll through for our unit and stuff. So it was pretty cool. For those who experience bulls that hang up, what are a few of the avenues of approach that they can take in order to just close that distance and hopefully kind of squeeze an opportunity out of that situation?
Yeah, that's a tough one because I have bulls that hang up, and I have lots of encounters that end up not being successful. So by no means do I bat 1,000. I don't want people to get that impression by any stretch. So that is a reality for all of us. I have found that by changing sounds is one thing that will help occasionally. If you're blowing, a certain sound, I've even found sometimes, Stephen, that if I'm blowing, say, my mouth reed, and the bull is initially bugling to it, and he seems like he's coming to it, and all of a sudden he hangs up. At that point, I feel like I've really got nothing to lose, so I may switch to one of my open reed calls because they're very different sounding than a mouth reed, and a lot of times that'll break them loose. and get them to come on in.
Huh. Okay.
As well. And then a lot of times I always say, it's not the sounds you're making, it's distance. Distance makes so much difference. It seems like a lot of times there's bulls that will come a certain ways to you, and then they get to that point and they're like, I'm not coming any further. It's your time to get closer to me.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I'll pick up and sneak in and cut the distance down by quite a bit, and then they come in eagerly.
Okay.
It seems to me like a lot of bulls, some bulls you can work them up enough to where they will come out in the open. They'll come out into the wide open, and it's pretty awesome when you're filming for that to happen.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they like to stick to the trees, and if you're in the trees with them and you're close, they'll come to you. Because a lot of times they don't like to break out of a tree line and come across, a clearing or an opening. They just feel a little edgy about that, especially if you're, in the afternoon or getting a little mid-morning and the sun's shining. They don't really like breaking out into the open like that. It's just kind of instinctual for them, I think.
Yeah, they almost do that like pinball effect, kind of. Like they just kind of go from tree to tree.
Yeah.
Have you ever taken a client in to two battling bulls?
Gosh, I have to say,
I mean, like antlers locked, like they're just going at it, trying to fight each other.
I have not. Okay. I've heard bulls fighting in the distance and aggressively move toward it, to try to get in that scenario, but it seems like the fight always ends before I get there.
Yeah.
I just haven't even heard that very often. Okay. I do remember years ago, though, seeing one of the McClendon's videos, one of those Awesome Bulls videos, and they had a sequence like that where a client killed a bull that was actually locked up in a fight, and it was pretty amazing footage. Yeah.
So in a situation like that, if somebody comes across that, should they just, what do you do?
Oh, absolutely. Just charge in there, because those bulls are locked up. They are totally distracted. They're almost deafened because their antlers are clashing, and there's all kinds of noise going on, their foot noise and all of that. So I would say that's kind of the time to throw caution to the wind. And now, obviously, if you hear them stop fighting, you want to slow down yourself and get cautious. But if you hear them in the middle of that fight,
If you have two bulls together like that, should you be keeping eyes out for satellite bulls as well? Will they be kind of hovering around the perimeter, or is it more often than not, is that a herd bull already fighting a satellite?
Yeah, typically a herd bull fighting a satellite, but you never know when there's going to be a cow or something like that. And I found with elk, it seems like spikes are the elk that get no respect, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So I found sometimes if I spook a spike, it won't blow everything up. But if you spook a mature cow, 99 times out of 100, you spook a mature cow and it's going to blow the scenario, whatever it may be.
Yeah. I heard recently that just like a herd bull, there's a herd cow. Is that true?
Yeah. There's typically a lead cow who's a mature cow and kind of controls the movements of that herd, like when they go, when they stay, all of that kind of stuff. That's the cow who's going to pull the bull away from your calling a lot of times. She's going to have that mindset of, we've marched into somebody calling off away from the herd a couple of times now, and it didn't end well. We smelled something really stinky and saw some movement that we didn't like, and so a lot of times she's the one who's dictating that bull not coming to you.
Yep. Yeah, catches whiff of something and she's out of there. That's it.
Yeah.
Yep. For those that are doing late hunts, how late have you heard of or experienced bulls bugling? For those people that are doing like November or December, can you even bother trying to locate bugle in the early morning hours, or is it just dead by then?
In general, I'm going to say it's dead, but I have had some bulls bugle on the late hunt to cow calling. I've even called an occasional bull in on the late hunt, but again, I don't expect for that to happen year in and year out by any means. I remember years ago having a late hunter in 7 East, and we were out glassing those volcanic mountains out in the North Country. And, we weren't seeing anything, nothing was happening. And it was like the last 20 minutes of light. And once again, I thought, well, the client can't say too much because nothing's happening. So I'm going to try doing a little light cow calling. What can it hurt? And Steve and I no sooner got a series of 2 or 3 cow calls out, and a bull bugles up on top of this volcanic mountain in front of us up in the timber. And next thing I know, here he comes just trotting down the hillside toward us and ends up stopping in an opening, and we shoot him.
Wow.
So I would say not only can it work occasionally like that, don't expect that, but where it really pays off, calling does on the late hunt, especially if, you have more than just yourself there. If the non-shooting person can be on a call, and definitely make your first shot count. Mm-hmm. But if you miss or you need that elk to stay around, if you call, they will stand there and they don't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. They don't really know where the shots are coming from or necessarily what it is. And if you're blowing a call, usually they'll stand there. I've literally had guys empty their clip and the elk stay there.
Wow. That's insane.
Not the scenario you're looking for. You wish they would hit him on the first shot.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It just speaks though to how much these animals can withstand, like the abuse, I guess, or just not the abuse, but the trauma that they can handle and still just stand there and think little of it, really.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So, can you elaborate a little bit just on our experience last September? We were hunting a pretty common unit, and the bulls were dead quiet up until September 18th. And like you said, most of the tags kind of start between the 10th and the 13th. It was super warm up until that midweek and right up until the 18th. And then basically a huge thunderstorm front rolled through the night before and just downpoured, and it finally brought cold temps. That next morning we walked out front of our trailer and it was like you could see our breath. I think it was like 34 when we woke up. Like it just completely changed. And after that, the bulls just began vocalizing and bugling like crazy. Sub 100 yards, they'd quiet up a bit, and there was like minimal responses to cow calls. The herd bulls were very timid, sub 100 yards to any sort of calling. And like you said, maybe that was because they had what they wanted already.
Yeah.
But we had great success in drawing in bulls with bugles and cow calls up to that 100-yard mark. So it seemed like we kept getting within that 100-yard radius. And in the end, Jake and I both ended up taking satellite bulls. Does that just speak to the difficulty of drawing out that herd bull?
It does somewhat, for sure. And again, I don't want people to think that I hit 1,000 when it comes to that. When the conditions are tough, they're tough for me as well. And that's one part about guiding that can be a little challenging is I've been very blessed over the years to have great hunters who keep a positive attitude. And I think we both kind of uplift each other and keep each other in the game. But, I'll tell guys, hey, we're going to have our moment. Just stick with me. I will put bulls in front of you, but there's going to be days where we're going to go out and we may not hear a bugle this morning and we may not call a bull in, but then there'll be a morning like you talk about, Stephen, where things change. Either you get to that time of the month when they turn on, cows are coming into heat, and the bugling starts up. Then you may go out and call in half a dozen bulls in the morning, and things change. Again, I'm finding distance and convenience to get to you being huge factors on shy bulls. I've had a lot of bulls this last year in Unit 9 who would, even satellite bulls, who would bugle at me from, say 500 yards away when I would blow a cow call from a distance. And then when I would get, say 150, 200 yards, they got quiet on me. But then when I would get in real close to their bedding area and maybe get, say, 80, 100 yards away, and just call. In those instances, I don't like to overpower them, especially if I feel like I'm dealing with a satellite bull. Okay. If they're shy and hesitant, then I just want to be nice and subtle and smooth with them, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
Not overpower them with the call. And if they answer it, again, I don't want to overpower them with my response. I just want to give them, maybe 1 to 2 soft, sweet talk answers back to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're in a situation where you're closing that distance to a herd bull, and say he's more often than not, we found ours had cows literally surrounding him, say there's a dozen or more. What's our best attempt to separate him from his cows? Because he's literally almost at times he's got to break through like a little wall of cows to come out, and you're not even going to have an opportunity. He's buried in there. Like there's no way.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you have to assess the scenario, and sometimes not calling if you see that scenario like you're talking about, almost like he's in a buffalo herd. Maybe holding your calling for that moment and just let things shift a little bit. And, maybe all of a sudden, he's on the fringe of the herd somewhere, either to the right or the left, or, he's on the edge of the herd. And now it makes more sense. It's easier for him to get to you if you bugle at him.
Yeah.
It cut it loose. But yeah, there's another time is if, it seems to me like if they're moving pretty aggressively away from you, and and they're always moving into the wind, they're moving into the wind.
Yep.
So they got wind in their nose. And if you're behind them and you're bugling at him, in general, he's not going to turn around and come back. You almost have to get him in a scenario where they're either just get at their bedding area or they're getting real close to it and they're kind of slowing down and staging up a little bit. Things are slowed down a little bit, so it's more of a controlled scenario.
Yep.
And then you get that visual on them and you're close and the terrain is right. There's enough vegetation to kind of hide you, and then blow that bugle at them. And something I haven't touched on is I say when you blow a bugle at a herd bull, like when I'm blowing that lip ball bugle, in my mind, I think I want to make a statement with this call. I don't want to ask a question. I want to make a statement.
Yep. You're essentially getting up and punching them in the face and saying, I'm here to challenge you.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm not really that kind of a person. I'm not a fighter kind of a person. I never have been. So that kind of flies against who I am. But when I get in the elk woods, I can shift my mind when I'm dealing with a bull, because I love calling. That's what it's about for me, is playing that chess match, if you will, with them. And to me, it's not about killing that elk that floats my boat. It's about fooling him and having him come to the call completely duped by it and believing that you're another elk, you know, and having him come in and he's all flared up and drooling and bugling.
That's what's awesome. I love watching their reactions other than just the bugle and stuff, like seeing their nostrils flare. And like you said, they drool. A lot of the times they're slobbering and stuff. I mean, they're just like, they're basically like out of their mind. It's crazy.
Yeah. I love a big bull swagger too. When you get in close to him and you blow that, to me, that call is a combination of this. On one hand, you're flirting with his cows. You're talking to his cows and you're soliciting his cows to come to you. And by doing that, you're threatening and demeaning him by doing that. So it kind of serves two purposes that both trip his trigger toward anger and wanting to defend and come over and get you out of there. And when they come over, man, the swagger they have, the way they're walking, with their head high and just the confidence, it's amazing to watch.
It is. It's
like,
funny.
I think, what if he actually got to me?
I know, right?
If he got to that tree I was behind.
Like, now I really got to back it up. Talk about glunking a little bit, just real quick, for those that maybe don't know what it's about. This last season when I hunted, that was the first time I'd ever encountered glunking because I was close enough.
Yeah, to me, when I've observed that call, it's a call that bulls it's either a confidence call when they're coming into you and you're calling to them. Basically, they do it when I'm cow calling. When I'm cow calling to them, they'll come in and a lot of bulls will glunk, and it's a confidence thing. It's like they're just talking back to you and saying, "Yeah, I'm the man. I'm coming in to get you, hot lady," And then on the other hand, they do it when they're tending a cow. Like if they're a herd bull and, they got 15 or 20 cows and one of those cows is in estrus or close and they're smelling good to that bull, he will trail her around and he's glunking.
Yep.
doing that. I don't know exactly how they do it. I believe they do it some way in their throat.
Okay.
But again, I think it probably, the depth of it originates, down in their diaphragm, stomach, but it, comes out of their throat. And a very distinct kind of popping 3-dimensional sound.
It's weird. It's wild. It's almost like for turkeys, it's like spitting and drumming.
Yeah.
It's like the exact same thing, kind of. It's just a very unique sound.
Totally. I broke one bull loose with that sound last year.
Really?
Yeah, I thought he was a herd bull at first. Ends up he was a satellite bull who was just super aggressive, but I think he had been messed with, and I think he had been called in. And so, like you say, he came into about 100, 120 yards, and he hung up. So the first thing I did is I switched calls, and at that time I was blowing my open reed call. I switched to my Elk Camp mouth reed. I got him a little closer by doing that. Mm-hmm. But then he hung up again at about 75, 80 yards. And then when I started glunking, then he came right in.
Huh. Oh, I'll remember that one. I'll keep that in the bag of tricks.
Yeah.
Now,
I didn't do that. There's some guys, I think I've seen a guy or two who can do that, like with their voice. I'm not that talented with my voice. Seems hard. I just do it with, the palm of my hand, kind of stiffening my palm and, kind of boing, boing, boing on the top of my tube, on the small end of the tube.
Yep.
Gives it a pretty good rendition. Yeah.
Now, when you're switching from your open reeds to your diaphragms for cow calling, do you actually already have the diaphragm still in your mouth while you're blowing the open reed, or are you just doing a quick exchange and popping that diaphragm in?
Yeah, usually I'm doing the quick exchange because, again, I feel like I don't give either call justice if I'm trying to run them both. Like if I have a reed in my mouth and I'm trying to blow the open reed, generally I don't do a very good job of it.
Sure. So it's better to do the switch than try and run everything all at once.
For me, anyway. And one thing I have to make sure of is when I put that reed in my mouth, if it's not already damp, that I dampen it before I try to blow on it, get some saliva from my mouth on it. If you try blowing a dry reed, I'm sure you know what I mean, Stephen. It doesn't work very well.
No, definitely not. It
either get a no sound or a bad sound.
Doesn't sound the prettiest, that's for sure. If you have, say, 2 herds of elk, all right, and they're in close proximity to each other, and each herd hosts a dominant herd bull, what's your approach to a situation like this? Now, this scenario was what I encountered last season, and so just in case anybody else, it's probably pretty rare. It felt rare to me, but basically you have these 2 clashes of herds coming together. Maybe this happens more often, I don't know. But how are you going to attempt to close the distance and get an opportunity on one of those bulls in that situation? Or is it just best to hang back and try and wait for a satellite in a scenario like that?
Yeah, satellites are always a good consolation prize. I will say that for sure. Herd bulls are tough, and a lot of times it's more about the cows that are tough to deal with because they miss much. I have found that if 2 bulls are bugling like that, if I'm somewhere in the middle of that and I try to call, in general for me, that doesn't work. It's almost like I have to decide and commit to hunting one or the other of those herd bulls. That's what I found is that I can't just, take the easy approach, so to speak, and just put myself kind of in the middle and start either bugling or cow calling. It just does it. They'll bugle at it a little bit, and then it seems like everything starts moving away from me.
Right.
So I found more and more that if I, make a determination, which one of these do I want to go after? And I'm a sucker for the big, heavy, raspy sounding bulls. Those are the ones I want to look at for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had 2 herd bulls off to my right that were fighting it out. And, oddly enough, for some reason, my satellite bull that came in and that I shot sounded burlier and just bigger than the herd bulls. He just had a unique bugle that was very deep. And we encountered some other bulls that were massive that had really, really tiny bugles. And so you kind of see a mixture of everything out there.
I always say, I like to think I'm fairly good at picking out that 2.5-year-old bull, those 4 and 5 points. And a lot of times those, 3.5-year-old 6 points, most times, I would say 9 times out of 10, I can say, that is an immature bull. And when they come in, sure enough, that's the case.
What can you translate to us then that we can use to pick up on that? Like, what part of that hits your ears and you're like, there it is. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's a little hard to explain. I kind of would say, this kind of ages me and dates me, but it's kind of that Brady Bunch, Peter Brady syndrome. If there was an episode where his voice was changing.
Yeah, I know. I've seen that one. Yeah, his voice starts to crackle and everything and stuff.
Yeah,
yep.
It's not necessarily that their bugle cracks.
Okay.
But it seems to me like those younger bulls, their bugle is more voicey, if you will. It sounds more voicey.
Okay.
And a lot of people mistake that and think that those are the big bulls. And to me, the bigger bulls either blow that lip ball sound, that real raspy, heavy sound, or they'll have a real strong, high-pitched, just a super strong, high-pitched, almost ear-piercing bugle, and then at the end, it's got that real heavy at the end of it. You know what I mean?
Do you have your a call and a bugle tube right there?
I actually do not. I hate to say.
Maybe we can do a video later if you get a few minutes of like a mature bull call versus like a more immature call.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. I'd have to go dig.
That's okay. That's all right. That's all right. In your latest short film that you threw up there on YouTube, that Screaming Bulls episode, there's a moment where this just, in my point of view, this stud bull comes walking in, and to the viewers, it looks like everything's perfect. You know, the shot's perfect. It was all set up. And in the moment, you literally, to your client, you're like, Mark, don't shoot that bull. Don't shoot that bull. Can you break that down? Because to the probably the more inexperienced guy like me, where it's like, I'm just hungry to get a shot, it looks like craziness. But tell us why exactly you knew that it was important to pass on that elk in the height of the moment.
Yeah, I'm telling you, in hindsight, I probably wouldn't have said anything. I just let
I didn't mean to put you on blast.
Yeah.
No, but that was a good, because his bull was phenomenal, the one that he ended up getting.
I think all in all, those bulls were fairly equal, because this bull I verbally told him to pass on had strong fronts and great thirds, and he looked wide. He had those flaring thirds, and he just looked awesome coming head on. And he had kind of a weird, real high fluty sounding bugle. So again, he didn't sound like a young bull to me, but I'm really intrigued when I hear a weird sounding bugle. A lot of times that's a pretty big bull. But then when I caught a glimpse of his fifths and his beam length, he just lacked good fifths and kind of died in the back end. And it was the 8th day, and I just thought, gosh, we can do better than that.
Yeah.
So just in the moment, I just made that quick judgment call, and after it happened, he was totally fine with it. Mark was. He asked like, why didn't you let me shoot or anything like that? And then I put the heat on myself for sure by thinking, okay, now the pressure's really on you, dude. Not only did you tell him to pass that bull, but now you better get him something at least as big or bigger. Sure.
Yep. And you guys came down to day 10, I believe, right?
Yeah. And unbeknownst to me, Stephen, this is a little, kind of behind the scenes, if you will. I didn't realize that I think day 10 was either Mark's birthday or the following day was his birthday. I can't remember which. But I think the scenario was not only did his family want him back for his birthday, but they had just gotten a new pool at their house.
Oh, wow.
So there were two things kind of pulling him home. And I didn't really realize that until that morning. I was thinking we got the whole 14 days to hunt, So I was feeling the pressure, so to speak. Now I know now I probably would have, had him turn loose on that 8th evening bull. But then on that 10th morning, when I was like, oh, wow, he really is probably going to go home. It's the 9th inning now,
Yeah, but in hindsight and everything, and watching that and knowing that all, to me personally, I believe that's clearly the way that it was supposed to go down. In a situation like that, it was just meant to happen. So, and that's what's great about hunting, is sometimes you just get these things where you it was supposed to happen that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to stress, with the way I'm talking about passing these bulls and like on that encounter that, gosh, I sure don't want to come across as just this snob of, if you don't kill a 350 bull, you've not succeeded on a hunt. Because again, for me, it's about being out there, playing that calling game with the elk, enjoying, God's creation, being around people who you'd like to be around, and just enjoying everything that elk hunting is, and like you say, Steve, score the hunt, not the rack.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think that needs to be stressed. I mean, sure, if you have a great tag and you've got a lot of time to expend on it, I feel like there's nothing wrong with gunning for what the best you can. But at the end of it all, don't put so much pressure on yourself that it's just all about, a score. Otherwise, a lot of times you're disappointed at the end.
Sure. Yeah, no. Yeah. It's all about the experience and what you take away from it.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, and I feel like if we, not only take an elk, but if, me and my hunter make a connection, a lasting friendship, and, if that guy drew a tag again, if Mark drew a tag again, I would fully expect him and want him to call me again, because I would love to hunt him again.
Yep.
And if my guy Tim Sightsinger from last year drew a tag again, I would love to hunt with him. That's the kind of relationships I want to have with my hunters, for sure.
Yeah, and your TV series, man, it does a great job of translating the camaraderie that you have with your clients. Like, it absolutely does a phenomenal job of showing that relationship.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah, and I credit my hunters a lot for that. I've just really, really been blessed in that regard. It's awesome.
Yeah. On another scene from Screaming Bulls, your client Mark passes on a bull with broken main beams. You guys actually use that encounter, and you turn that bull into almost a walking decoy for other bulls to come into. Is that a strategy that typically produces results, or was that just kind of a riskier on-the-fly strategy and you just dove into that decision?
Yeah, you're right. It's kind of just on the fly and assessing the scenario. Mm-hmm. It's interesting how when they really get ruddy, a lot of times, you can almost just parallel them or walk along with them, and they don't pay you a lot of attention. And then, you can kind of just use them as a decoy. But then other times, when they're not full-blown rut, they're going to be more alert and attentive. And, you're not going to be able to get away with that. If they, know you're around, or they see your movement, they're going to blow out of there.
Yeah.
And then it's everything. It's amazing to me, just the sound of an elk blowing up and running, how it alerts everything in the woods.
Yeah, no, it does, definitely. And it's the loudest crash that you'll ever hear in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes, you can get away with covering it up with calling to make them think, oh, well, there's just, a bull chasing a cow or whatnot. But most times, the reality of it is they know that something bad happened over there.
Yeah. Well, for me, though, personally, I mean, seeing you use that tactic, that was super cool. That was neat to kind of like, we've got this live, real life elk in front of us that we're almost basically using as a decoy to draw in other satellite bulls. That was pretty cool to see that happen.
And speaking of that, I've really utilized a Montana decoy over the years, and I want the listeners to know they don't sponsor me. They should, but they don't. Montana decoys, if you're listening. But very, very effective. It is amazing. Elk, you can't fool an elk's nose. But visually, I've heard it said that they have the visual acuity of approximately 20/60. So wow. they pick up on movement very well, but they don't have real sharp acuity. And with a decoy, I tell you, it totally dupes them.
Yeah, it's good to have that extra barrier there, because sometimes it's like you can tell when they hang up and they're looking like they want to make that visual connection somehow. Yeah. And if there's nothing there, that's when that bull that's hung up will just walk away sometimes. So.
Yeah, or if you're in kind of more open pine country and you're trying to make a move to cut distance, and you can visually look out there and see them a couple 100 yards away, but you need to get tighter. Definitely, use the wind, stick to the shade as much as you can. But if you put that decoy out there in front of you, it seems like for me, most times they might glance up and see it as you're kind of moving toward them. And then they just pretty much disregard it. They just go, that's an elk. And they just go back to what they're doing, feeding, whatever they happen to be doing, and you can move in there.
Yep. You released a few new calls this year for your personal lineup. Can you tell us a little bit about those calls and what you've kind of done to enhance them and just stand apart from the previous years?
Yeah, so first, I work in conjunction with Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls, and it's been a decade. It's been awesome working with them on these calls. I'm super appreciative of them and that company. So we revamped all of my mouth reeds, my 3 mouth reeds. We put them on what's called the DTP frame. So it's a 1-piece aluminum frame. I would classify it as probably a medium frame call. So it's going to fit most people's mouths. In general, it's going to fit most people's mouths. 2 of those reeds, just like the former reed, are single latex. The Royal Point, which is the closest to my former Challenge reed, is that single kind of lighter latex that's really good for bugling and chuckling sounds. And, once it gets broke in a little more, it can kind of become a cow calling reed as well. Mm-hmm. So that new one is the Royal Point. And then the Tines Up replaced the Closer. And it's a double reed, but it's not a true double reed. The second reed has like a V-notch cut in. And it basically just makes it more user-friendly, to where you can blow it and break it easier and make sound out of it easier than just a true double reed that takes much more air pressure. So again, I really like that Tines Up reed because it kind of has that spine or backbone, if you will, of that second half reed there. So you can really make nice bugling, nice lip ball sound with it. Again, nice bugling or nice chuckling and grunting with it. And again, as it breaks in and loosens up just a little bit, you can, use it as a combo reed for cow calling. But probably my favorite reed is this new Elk Camp reed, which is, kind of notched up from the estrus excited reed that we had before. And it's kind of a medium latex, medium stretch. It's got that real full, I like to say full or fat sound, if you will. It's kind of got that 3-dimensional, nasal quality to it. Uh-huh. And that's what you really want in a call, whether it's an open reed call or a mouth reed. Again, I like nasal, 3-dimensional, and fat, full sound is what I like in an elk call.
Yeah. I used, I believe it was the Tines Up. I have all of your calls, but I think I used the Tines Up pretty heavily last season, and that thing just worked phenomenally. I mean, that was, nice. Oh my gosh, I love that call so much.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, in fact, that morning I think I actually used it, I bugled with it mostly, but I used it just to make a quick cow call to stop my bull right before I shot it. But
absolutely. Yeah, great, because there's no reason to shoot at a moving elk for sure.
No, yeah, I'm not in favor of that shot.
Yeah, nice work on that. And then the other call that we're coming out with brand new for this year is called the Heartbreaker. Yep. And it's an open reed call. If you look at it, yes, it's similar to my trophy wife and my matriarch. However, it has an aluminum barrel. And I'll be honest with you, when I was talking to Kurt and Mike at Rocky Mountain Hunting Calls, and we were in the process of developing this call, mm-hmm. and they talked about using aluminum on some of their calls and what my thoughts were on it, I have to be honest. In my mind, I thought, this is going to sound harsh and brash and loud, and it's not going to be what I want. But then when we worked with it, and I got the call and then ultimately took it to the woods, it was just the opposite of what I thought it would be, Stephen. Oh, wow. It has that nasal, 3-dimensional, full, fat sound to it.
Nice.
It's just, it just speaks elk when you blow it. Yeah. And to add to the attractiveness of it even more, I like to call when I'm blowing an open reed call. This is just kind of, I guess, a little crutch or habit that I have. Mm-hmm. I like, even if it's warm outside, I like to use a light pair of gloves, because I just feel like it kind of dampens the sound just a little bit and gives it that tone that I want. But this call, it has a soft touch finish on it.
That's awesome.
So it's coated with a soft touch finish, and so it feels grippy in your hands instead of slippery. So if you're calling like I do with a pair of light, cotton or whatever gloves you're using, it's going to feel grippy in your hand instead of slippery.
Yep. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. I had a Davis Reynolds made sure that I wanted to ask you about the Heartbreaker call. So that's perfect that you covered that.
Yeah. Awesome, Davis. Great question. And, I'm super happy with the call. When I took it to the woods as a prototype, it was phenomenal. In fact, the biggest bull, there goes my German Shepherd. He's the biggest bull that I called in last year, and he actually came out into a wide open meadow. It was like my dream scenario on video, was with that Heartbreaker.
That's awesome.
It brought him right out of the tree line, a big, mature, long time, dark antlered 6-point, just the kind you dream about, you know?
Yep. It's funny when you see those moments where like you're well, I guess for you and me, your photographer, videographer kicks in and you're like, oh, footage. Like, yes. I hope he's rolling and I hope he's on the ball. And they always are. Absolutely. My guys did amazing this last year. Awesome. For sure. And the Rogue grunt tube, I'm trying to think. I believe we put that out in 2019. So this will be the second year that the Rogue is out. Super, super happy and satisfied with it. I tell you, Stephen, it has been, not to use a common phrase, but it's a game changer for me as far as bugling at these herd bulls and getting results, because again, I believe it's all about the tone and emotion and sound of that call and it making a statement instead of sounding like a question out there. And you mix these mouth reeds with that Rogue tube, it just gives you the right volume, amplification, and 3-dimensional quality that it just triggers those bulls to come over. Yeah, absolutely. Where can people go to find those calls or the tube and the Heartbreaker? Yeah, I was about to just blurt out at your sporting goods store, but then I realized back to reality. Right. Somewhat of a nightmare we're living in right now. Yeah, really. But for now, the best place I would advise him to go to bugling. Rocky Mountain Hunting calls. Say that one more time. You cut out there for a second. You bet. They could just type in buglingbull.com. Okay. Perfect. Or they could go Google search Rocky Mountain Hunting calls. And then once they're on there, they could just shop elk calls and they would find, all of those calls we're talking about. I think they even have a link for Steve Chappell's signature line. Yeah. I'm pretty certain they do. And they can get them off my website as well. Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll throw links in the show notes for sure for anybody that wants to check those out and put a direct link to that. Yeah, thank you. The other day on your Instagram, it looked like you had some sweet new camo that you were kind of showcasing. Is that anything special or something that you're running this year that's different that you can kind of tell us why you've chosen it? Yeah, great question. I do think it's very special. It's SKRE. It's SKRE, and I need to figure out if that's some sort of acronym, if it stands for anything. Okay. But it's called SKRE gear. I guess I was kind of under a rock. I think they've been around for about 5 years, but I had never seen them or heard of them. But I was at the Western Hunting Expo in Utah earlier this year and was walking around the show, and I saw their booth, and the first thing that caught my attention was their camo, obviously. And I walked in there and, started looking at the pattern, and I really like the Summit pattern that they have. Okay. And, I was, looking at the pieces, looking at the jackets, the pants, everything. They are, super technical gear. But at the same time, if you're not in the rain gear, they're very soft and quiet. And then when I got that, that package that you saw me unbox. Yes, sir. I'm telling you, Stephen, it feels like you're putting on a second skin when you're wearing it. Huh. I'm just going to check that out. Yeah, very nice. Moves with you. The fit is very good. Like the pants, they're not baggy.
They stay on well. They just feel good on your body. Like I said, very technical gear, but I think, very competitively priced too.
Awesome. Yeah.
So, my feeling is that's what I'm going to be going into the woods this fall.
Yeah. And that's one thing I've been looking at a lot too with clothing lines lately, is I've been judging them based off of how much sound they make when I walk. And I know that's not probably as important for elk, because you can get away with some sound while you're walking out there for elk hunting. But I guess I've been on coos lately, and being able to be dead quiet while you're stalking up on some deer and stuff, especially coos deer, it's been paramount. And so I've noticed some clothing lines that just, you hear that swish, swish, swish when you're walking, and I'm just like cringing when I hear that sound.
I totally agree with that, Steve, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think elk will tolerate foot noise, and like sticks breaking and a rock getting kicked, and the sound that elk would make with their hooves on the ground. Yeah. But you get into those odd sounds, like you say, the sound of the swishing clothes that sound like they belong on the ski resort instead of in the elk woods. And elk don't tolerate those kind of unnatural sounds. So you hit on it just right. So I'm like you. I'm looking for very quiet. That's what I like about this scree gear. You pick, again, the rain gear is for when it's raining, and they have that to cover that. But if it's not raining, you want to be wearing, the stuff that's nice and quiet. Doesn't make.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, hey, where can people follow you at? And then how can we just kind of watch your journey and everything as we're going into this? I guess we got a little bit of a summer lull, but I mean, September is going to come here before we know it. And where can we follow you at and watch everything that happens?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate that. For people who are on Instagram, they can find us at Elk Camp TV. And, we typically post 5 or 6 times a week. We stay pretty active on there.
Oh, yeah.
And as you know, it's pretty elk focused. And then on Facebook, it would be at Chappell Guide Service on Facebook for people who are Facebook users. Basically, the same posts are going to be on each site, so whatever's most convenient to your listeners. They can get to my website, probably the easiest way. Of course, they can put in chappellguideservice.com, but it's probably easier. They could just type in elkcamptv.com. Okay. And that will take them to my website. It's got all the information about my guide service there. My elk calls are there. The information about the TV show, which again is going to air starting June 29th on Sportsmen Channel, which I'm a Dish Network subscriber, and it's channel 395 on Dish Network. I think it's 605 on DirecTV. Okay. And I apologize to people who don't have cable. My apology, and I will. As time goes on, I want your listeners to know that part of the rules of airing the show on the network, and I totally get it from the network standpoint, is there's a period of exclusivity, and so I can't just air these episodes digitally like on YouTube or wherever else right away. I've got to let the network, have them for a full year before I'm able to get them out there. And since, I'm just starting into my 3rd season of Elk Camp on the network, I'm just able now to start releasing some onto YouTube. Yep.
And that's that Screaming Bulls episode that I'm referring to. Yeah. And you know what, though? Your content is absolutely worth the wait. So we'll hold out and we'll keep going for those of us that don't have cable TV.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Steve. Thank you. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, plug your guide fees program as well, too, for anyone that might pull up this episode and is an out-of-state hunter coming to Arizona this year. Tell us a little bit about that so they can learn about it.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yes. So that is, it's called Zero Hunt Fees. And what that is it's basically an alternative way to pay for a guided hunt. And I realize that more and more in the day and time that we live in, it's super hard for, any of us to come up with, say, $6,000 or $7,000 for a guided hunt, because that's basically what a guided hunt costs these days, or more. And so what I developed with the Zero Hunt Fees program is a way for someone who can't afford that or doesn't want to pay that. Maybe they can't get spousal approval or whatever the case may be. So with this program, they just pay a simple $349 a year. to be in 0 hunt fees. There's no catch to it other than they have to draw a tag. That's the only catch, is that they have to draw a tag. Some guys think, oh, well, you're going to lock me in for 20 years. So if I draw the first year or the 5th year or the 10th year, you're going to make me stay in to, quote, pay off my hunt, unquote. And that's not the case. Had multiple members draw the first year, 2nd year, or 3rd year in the program. And it's totally their option. If they want to opt out after they've drawn their hunt and their money ahead big time, they can do that. And some guys do that. Other guys will stay in. But again, Stephen, the long and short of it is, it's $349 a year. When they draw the tag, their guided hunt fees are covered. Plus, they get yearly application and hunt choice consultation as part of their membership.
That's awesome.
So they learn how the draw works.
Yep.
They understand why they're applying for these units, and why. I like to give them a good understanding of the whole process. And then ultimately, when and if they draw a tag, it's covered. I guess you could also say it's like guided hunt insurance, if you will.
Yeah. And it's worth it just alone into having that consultation, I think, because sometimes it's daunting, the amount of stuff that you're trying to absorb and educate yourself in, as to learning like how different draw results work and stuff like that. So to have somebody that can, basically hold your hand through the process and give you the best advice, I mean, that's worth it right there.
Yeah, exactly. And what units should I put in for, and why, and what order should I put them in for? Yeah, exactly. It's very intimidating. And especially for a guy, if he's dealing with multiple states that he's applying for, I just like to simplify it for him and guide him through the whole process, and then, guide him through the hunt when they draw.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time today. Any closing thoughts or anything else you'd like to throw in before we let you go?
Oh gosh, this will just be off the cuff, I guess, but I just, want to encourage everyone during this time to, draw closer to your family and be past it, because it will come to an end. It may flare up again at some point, but, just see past it, see to the other side, look to the blessings in your life. A lot of times getting quiet, if you will. Not having to deal with the everyday rat race can be really refreshing for a person, and just having some alone time and some quiet time, also a time to get closer to God and, see His purpose in it all. And, really, I don't totally know the purpose in it all, but I know that nothing ever occurs to God.
Right.
He doesn't have things surprise him. So there's a big purpose in all of this. And, for any of you out there who have family members who have, are sick or have maybe died from this, my heart goes out to you. I definitely don't take it lightly. I feel like my responsibility is to not get sick and pass it along, because I know by being responsible, we can flatten the curve as we've heard. And again, I just want to be an encouragement, and, I can't wait till we get to the other side of this and we get to get out in the elk woods. And as we said, and I posted today on Instagram, give handshakes and high fives and hugs, and that be the norm again, instead of feeling weird about this social distancing.
Yeah, I'm such a slap on the back handshake kind of guy. Like,
and
it's been so tough. It's been such a weird, I don't know, society lately.
I agree. And I hope it doesn't affect our younger ones too much, to where they're kind of going, what is going on? And then when we get to the other side of it, they can't process it, that, okay, now it's okay to hug and, show affection and, be other people. I just feel bad for younger kids. But
well, that's me. I've got younger daughters, and they're for sure starting the last couple of days. They're starting to question, like, why can't I see my friends at school, and like, why can't we hang? So it's starting to get there. But I'm hoping soon, that this will all pass. And for those of you that are kind of freaked out a little bit, if you're just ultra concerned, or you find yourself, off the charts stressed and stuff, just remember that ultimately God is on the throne, and that at the end of the day, that's all that we need to know, and that we can rely upon that. So couldn't have been said better. Absolutely, Stephen. And I'm appreciative too that up to this point, I realize that facilities and such out in the forest are closed, and I understand
but they have not closed the forest per se. So if you want to go out and shed hunt or turkey hunt, you can still do that. I know there's been a lot of rumors flying around that, the forests are closed, and they may be in some states, I don't know, but in Arizona, and I hope that, cooler heads will continue to prevail, and people remember that, outdoor activities are the ultimate social distancing and are super healthy and what we need right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, perfect. Hey, thank you so much, Mr. Chappell, for your time. I really appreciate it, man. And again, look forward to seeing content roll out from you as we get closer and closer to that time in the woods that we all look forward to.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stephen. Again, it was a pleasure being on with you again, and really appreciate you and the time we spent here today, and wish you all the best.
Yeah, I'm always grateful, man. Thank you for your time.
God bless. Thank you, Stephen.
You too.
And listeners too. Thank you, listeners.
Yes, thank you guys. All right, I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Bowhunting AZ podcast.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at bowhuntingaz.
If you would, please smash those 5 stars for us on iTunes and leave us a little review. It'll really help us out.
Good luck on your next hunt. We'll catch you in the next episode.
See ya.